Good morning, students. So this will be my 16th lecture on engineering thermodynamics, where we will, in continuation with the last class, discuss about reversibility, irreversibility, and followed by one very important concept called Carnot cycle today. So in the last class, I was explaining about what a reversible process is, and we define reversible process as one at the completion of which the system can be restored to its initial configuration along the same path, but condition is that without leaving any trace of its occurrence on the surrounding or on the rest of the universe. Now we also discussed that this particular thing of not leaving any trace of its surroundings, not leaving any sign of its occurrence on the surroundings is not possible in a thermodynamic process, because when a process occurs, there are some features associated with it which are not reversible, which cannot be reverted back. For example, the frictional losses, for example, the noise, the turbulence. Altogether, this is called the dissipative effects. These dissipative effects are not repairable or reversible. Therefore, they create an impression on the universe and leave a shine that the process has actually occurred. Also, this is not possible because it could have been possible had the process been very slow. And when I say very slow, I actually mean it is very slow or infinitely slow. And you know that in actual practice, the thermodynamic processes do not happen with infinite slowness. So they have certain speed, and that speed has to be maintained, because you cannot expect a turbine to move with a rotational speed of say 1 degree per minute. It has to rotate at a speed of say 3000 rpm or 10,000 rpm or 30,000 rpm. Okay, an IC engine has to, the piston cylinder has to the crank has to rotate at a speed of 500 rpm or 600 rpm. So there is a finite speed, and infinite slowness of processes is not actually possible, and that is the reason why a reversible process is not possible. Another thing is that the points along the path of a process, each point along the path of a process has to be an equilibrium point if the condition of reversibility has to be satisfied. So every point is an equilibrium point, and this is possible, again it is linked with the slowness or fastness of the process. Every process can be considered to be an equilibrium point. That means at every point the system is in equilibrium with thermodynamic equilibrium with its surroundings. This happens only when the process occurs infinitely slowly. So there are two reasons why the processes are, the spontaneous processes or the actual processes are not reversible in nature. So what are the causes of a process not being reversible? That means what are the causes of the processes being irreversible, or what are the causes of irreversibility? What are the causes of irreversibility? In the last class, we listed out the conditions of reversibility. What were the conditions of reversibility? You can see your class note. First thing is that the process has to be infinitely slow. Second thing is that every point on the path should be an equilibrium point. The third thing is that there should not be the presence of any dissipative effects or any form of energy loss, like the one due to friction or due to noise or due to turbulence or due to wear and so on. So all these things are conditions of reversibility. So what are the causes of irreversibility? The lack of all these things are the causes of irreversibility. So causes of irreversibility are two. First is lack of equilibrium. lack of equilibrium, lack of equilibrium means lack of equilibrium between the system and surrounding at every point on the path. And second is involvement of or presence of or existence of involvement of dissipative effects. When I say dissipative effects, when I saw dissipative effects, I mean the bunch of all these things that are associated with a process that involves energy loss, like friction, wear, turbulence, noise, etc. Okay, they all together are called dissipative effects. And involvement or presence of dissipative effects and lack of thermodynamic equilibrium, these two are the causes of irreversibility of any real process. And if there is equilibrium, if there is no involvement of dissipative effect, then the process is, there is a possibility that the process will become a reversible process, and such a process can be thought of if we are assuming infinite slowness of the process, equilibrium at every point, absence of dissipative effects. Okay, so with this we will come to an important concept based on this reversible and irreversible processes. Now this is about reversible process. Before we go to the concept of Carnot cycle, I will tell you one more thing, that is, what is a reversible cycle? Now you know what is a cycle. What is a thermodynamic cycle? A thermodynamic cycle is a combination of processes in which the initial state happens to be identical with the final state. That means if there is a process like this, if there is a process like this, if there is a process like this, then 1 to 2, 2 to 3 and 3 to 1 is a combination of processes in which the system comes back to the initial state. That means the initial and final states are identical, and such a combination of processes are called, such a combination is called a thermodynamic cycle. Now in this process, all the three processes, that means if every process is a reversible process, then we say this is a reversible cycle. So a reversible cycle is one which consists of all reversible processes. All reversible processes. That means if a cycle has 4 processes and every process individually is a reversible process, then the cycle will be called a reversible cycle. Now if out of the 4 processes 3 are reversible and 1 is not reversible, 1 is a irreversible process, then also the system comes back to the initial state, but it will not be called a reversible cycle because not all processes are reversible. One of them is irreversible, therefore this will be an irreversible cycle. Then how to denote this, how to represent this reversible process and irreversible process in a thermodynamic cycle diagram or process diagram, that we must understand. Now I told you that if a process is occurring between 1 and 2, then we know there must be a path across which the system migrates from 1 to 2. Now if the system migrates very slowly or infinitely slowly from 1 to 2, then the path is traceable. The path can be traced because every point on the path is now a distinct point, and at every point the system will be in equilibrium with the surroundings. So information about every point can be made known by us. Clear? That's the condition of reversibility. Okay, so think of a process which is actually occurring in with an infinite slowness. Then what happens? We know this point, we know this point, we know this point, this point, this point, this point, this point. So there may be a large number of points in between, but the information about the points are known to us. So we know this is the path. And such a process represented by a solid line from 1 to 2 will be a reversible process, because this said we have declared at the beginning that this process is taking place with infinite slowness, satisfying all conditions of reversibility. That means no friction, etc. So this process will be called a reversible process, and it will be represented by a solid line between 1 and 2. Okay, now suppose this process is actually real process, then point 1 and point 2, you know the information about point 1, which is an equilibrium point, point 2 is also an equilibrium point, but it occurs so fast that the actual intermediate points are not known. Then we can join them by a line and by dotted line, and this dotted line indicates that point 1 is an equilibrium point, point 2 is an equilibrium point. We know some conditions which is followed by the system while coming from 1 to 2, but we cannot pinpoint the intermediate points. Okay, so in that case this process will be still a process, but it will be an irreversible process, and in thermodynamics the irreversible process is denoted by or represented by a dotted line. Just like in machine drawing, you must have done a visible portion is given by a solid line, but a feature which is not visible but is present is given by a dotted line. Similarly, there in dotted line means, you understand in machine drawing, you understand that dotted line means the particular surface or plane or line is there, but it is not visible from the angle you are viewing it. Similarly, in thermodynamics, between two state points, if you have a dotted line, then you have to understand that there is a process occurring between 1 and 2, but the process is not a reversible process is a irreversible process. So reversible process is like this, 1 to 2, but an irreversible process will be represent this way. Okay, so both the processes have an initial state, have a final state 1 and 2. They have a path which is given by arrow mark, but the only difference is that if you find a solid line, then you have to understand that the conditions of reversibility have been satisfied, and that is not practically possible. That means you have to understand that this process is assumed to be reversible and this process is not assumed to be reversible, therefore is a real process or an irreversible process. Is that clear? No process is reversible, but still if I say a process, if I represent a process by a solid line, I have to understand, or you have to understand that because the process has been represented by a solid line, it has been assumed that the process is reversible. There is an advantage in assuming. Why? Because see, if we have done work done in an isothermal process, how much? P1, V1 ln V2 by V1. How did we do this? We took a PV coordinate, drew a isothermal line 1 to 2, found the area, okay, by integrating PdV from 1 to 2, and we got this expression. Now, how can you find the area under a curve when you do not know exactly all the points of the curve, or exact path that the curve has, or exact path between 1 and 2? That means this expression which says work, the magnitude of work done associated with an isothermal process, is actually found out assuming the process to be reversible. Okay, just in order to find the area under the curve, we have to assume the process to be reversible, because otherwise, or you have to carry out the integration, PdV integration from 1 to 2, you have to assume the process to be reversible, because the moment you don't assume it to be reversible, the very relation PV is equal to constant or PB to the power gamma is equal to constant, these relationships do not hold good, because these relationships are for a particular curve where every point on the curve are known to the user, otherwise not. So just like, for example, suppose I am giving you an example that then you will understand. Suppose I will give you a problem like this, that oxygen at pressure some value P1 and volume V1 is heated, and P1, V1 and T1 is heated at constant volume till its pressure becomes double. Then what will be its final temperature? So you are given the initial temperature, initial pressure of oxygen, and you are given the information that it is heated at constant volume, and you are also given the information about the final pressure, and you have to find out what is the final temperature. So what you will do? You will use the gas equation, that is P1 V1 by T1 is equal to P2 V2 by T2. Since it is constant volume, V1 and V2 are same, so P1 by T1 is equal to P2 by T2. So T2 will be equal to P2 by P1 into T1. So all these values are given to you, so you can find out T2. Yes or no? Now, how did you write this? PV by T is constant. Is it true for oxygen? PV by T is equal to a constant. Is this equation, is this mathematical relation valid for oxygen? Answer is no, because this is an ideal gas equation and oxygen is not an ideal gas. For that matter, no gas is an ideal gas. But whenever you get a gas problem like this, immediately you write PV by T is equal to constant and solve the problem and give the answer. So there what we do? We assume the gas, whether it is oxygen, whether it is air, whether it is nitrogen, we assume that gas to be an ideal gas and then use the ideal gas equation, knowing very well that no gas is ideal and no gas is perfect. Okay. Similarly, knowing very well that no process is reversible, still we find the work done in a process by integrating PdV, and when we do that, we always have to assume the process to be reversible. So all those expressions which we have in one of the classes found out, like work done in an isothermal process, work done in an adiabatic process. So work done in an isothermal process is how much? P1 B1 ln V2 by V1. What is adiabatic process work done? P1 B1 minus P2 V2 by gamma minus 1. What is an isobaric work done? P into V2 minus V1. What is a polytropic process work done in a polytropic process? P1 V1 minus P2 V2 by n minus 1. And where from these expressions are coming? They are coming from integration of PdV. And during carrying out this integration, what relationship you are using? Here you are using PV is equal to constant. Here you are using PV to the power gamma is equal to a constant. Here you are using P is equal to constant. And here you are using PV to the power n is equal to constant. Now, after understanding the reversible and irreversible process, let us realize that all these expressions or all these relationship, PV is equal to a constant or PV for gamma is equal to constant and so on, are the conditions for not for isothermal process, adiabatic process or constant pressure process, but for a reversible isothermal process, a reversible adiabatic process, a reversible isobar and a reversible polytropic process. Similarly, what is work done? Work done in a reversible isothermal process, work done in a reversible adiabatic process, work done in a reversible isobaric process and work done in a reversible polytropic process. If the process is not assumed to be reversible, you cannot carry out the integration PdV from V1 to V2 and come up with an expression for work done. It is just like if you do not assume the gas in a problem, oxygen, nitrogen or air, to be an ideal gas or perfect gas, if you do not assume that to be an ideal gas, you cannot get the final pressure or final temperature or final volume, whatever the problem has asked, by using perfect gas equation or PV is equal to MRT. Using that equation you can never get, because that equation is valid not for a real gas, it is valid for an ideal gas. So these expressions are valid for reversible processes. So whenever we are using any mathematical expression, we are actually silently assuming the process to be reversible, because otherwise we cannot use. Understood? So every cycle that has processes represented by solid lines will be a reversible cycle, and if there is a cycle where one of the processes or two of the processes or all the processes are represented by dotted line, or at least one of them is represented by dotted line indicating a irreversible process, then the cycle will not be called a reversible cycle. The cycle will be an irreversible cycle. So the mathematical exercise can be done only when you assume a gas to be perfect gas. Similarly, in thermodynamics, this mathematical exercises like integrating PDV or finding out the magnitude of work, etc., or area under a curve, all these things can be found out only when you assume the process to be reversible, because by assuming the process to be reversible, you are actually making sure, or you are actually assuming, or you are actually training yourself that not only point 1 is known to me and point 2 is known to me, I also know the exact path that the system has followed between 1 and 2, and this process I am assuming to be a reversible process, thereby I am representing it by a solid curve, not by a curve with dotted line. Clear? Now come to the Kelvin-Planck statement. Let us come to the Kelvin-Planck statement. What does the Kelvin-Planck statement say? The Kelvin-Planck statement, try to recall. The Kelvin-Planck statement of second law of thermodynamics says that it is impossible to construct an engine operating in a cycle while exchanging heat to produce net work while exchanging heat between reservoirs at single fixed temperature. Or in simple term, in a heat engine, Q1 is the amount of heat that is to be derived from a source, Q2 is some magnitude of heat that is to be thrown to a sink, and the Q1 minus Q2 difference is only appearing as mechanical work W. So W is equal to Q1 by Q2, and your efficiency is W by Q1. That means what fraction of Q1 is converted to W, and that is equal to Q1 minus Q2 by Q1, or efficiency is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. So this I am writing as 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Now we also discussed that eta is not equal to 1 because Q2 is not equal to 0. That means ऐसा नहीं होगा कि the engine will give you work and will not reject any heat to the sink. ऐसा संभव नहीं है. This is not possible. So the engine has to derive some heat, you have to bring some heat Q1 from the source, throw some heat to the sink Q2, the difference only will appear as mechanical work. I am repeating it. Okay. Now because Q2 cannot be 0, it's not possible that no heat is rejected to sink. Some heat has to be rejected to the sink. So Q2 cannot be 0, so eta cannot be 1. That means eta cannot be 100%, and that is one of the inferences that we had drawn from the Kelvin-Planck statement. Now question is, if an engine is not 100% efficient, if no engine is 100% efficient, or the 100% efficiency is something which is not attainable by any engine, then what is the maximum possible efficiency? because efficiency is 1 minus Q2 by Q1. So for an engine, I have to give the value of Q2 and Q1, then you can find out the efficiency. If I say there is an engine where 70 kilojoules of heat is drawn from the source and 20 kilojoules of heat is thrown to the sink. So what you will do? So what you will do? Eta will be equal to 1 minus 20 by 70. So जो भी होगा, this will be the efficiency of the engine. Amount of heat thrown by amount of heat received from the source, 1 minus that ratio. So unless I give you the value of Q2 and Q1, you are not able to find out the efficiency. And that efficiency value, whatever you will find out, will be less than 100%. It can be 60%, it can be 65%, it can be 30%, it can be 40%, 55%. Question ये है कि if no engine is 100% efficient, then what is the maximum efficiency? One thing is sure that it is not 100%. 100% तो नहीं होगा, लेकिन कितना होगा? Whether it is 99 or whether it is 90, who will decide it? Who decides what is the maximum attainable efficiency of any engine? So people started thinking about it, and because all engines operate on the basis of cycles, so the scientists, they started designing different thermodynamic cycles which can be used as a basis for constructing an engine such that the engine will exhibit some efficiency. So there were many cycles that were proposed, like Otto cycle, diesel cycle, Ericsson cycle, Stirling cycle, and so on. For not only for engine but also for power producing plants like thermal power plant, there is a cycle called Rankine cycle. So all these cycles people proposed, but then, and they also calculated the efficiency, and they got different efficiency values for that. And the entire engineering community started thinking about a maximum or the most what will be the most efficient engine, or what will be the, at least theoretically on pen and paper, what will be the most efficient cycle. And there was a scientist called Sadi Carnot. He was a German scientist, and he devised or designed a cycle, not an engine. He designed a cycle. That means he simply imagined processes and fixed them one after the other, okay, and finally completed a cycle. And he told, and he established that this is the cycle which among all comparable cycles will be the most efficient one. And that cycle till now is still considered to be the most efficient cycle, or that cycle is considered to be the cycle having maximum thermal efficiency, and name of that cycle is Carnot cycle. And this Carnot cycle again is not a new concept for you. In your school days or in your +2, you must have done something on Carnot cycle, okay. And if I ask you now, then many of you may answer that Carnot cycle consists of 2 isothermals and 2 adiabatics, okay, 2 isothermals and 2 adiabatics. So that is a wrong statement. We will discuss what exactly is a Carnot cycle and exactly the way Carnot proposed it. So Carnot told that there is a cycle, there can be a cycle which can be represented by PV diagram this way. One to 2, 3 and 4. 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So he told that this is he proposed this cycle, okay, which has got 4 cardinal points, 1, 2, 3, 4. And how do we describe this cycle? 1 to 2 is a process where temperature is constant. 2 to 3 is a process where no heat transfer takes place. 3 to 4 is a process where temperature again is kept constant. And 4 to 1 is a process where no heat transfer again takes place. So no heat transfer takes place here, no heat transfer takes place here in this process. But in this process there is Q1 amount of heat transfer, and in this process there is Q2 amount of heat transfer. Okay, and this cycle is called the Carnot cycle, named after Carnot, and he proposed this cycle and told that if a engine can be constructed on the basis of this cycle, then that engine will be the most efficient engine, will convert maximum amount of the input energy to mechanical work. That is the meaning of efficiency. And this is the cycle, or this is the basic thermodynamic cycle of that engine. Alright, so in the next class we will discuss what exactly is that maximum efficiency, whether that is achievable or not, whether the claim by Carnot is genuine or not, and if it is genuine, it is fine, then all engine on the world should be constructed on the basis of Carnot cycle. If it is not genuine, then what is the significance or purpose of studying it with so much emphasis? Okay, so all these things we will discuss in the next class, and there we will actually come up with a simple and small formula for or expression for the efficiency of a Carnot cycle, which is taken as the maximum possible efficiency value. This much for today. Thank you.